Let's take a first look at I Got It.
I Got It. So,
can you give me a little story on that?
Yeah, so I Got It. You know, I've had the tremendous opportunity to do composing residencies at various places. So I had the opportunity to do a composing residency. These are kind of foundations, nonprofits. They're scattered around the world, actually, in the U.S. as well, like McDowell Colony, which is somewhat well known, and there are quite a number of others. There was one in Spain, and I got the chance to go with my late wife, who is an made animated films. Her name was Karen Aqua. She left us sadly in 2011, but
Sorry for your loss.
I did a lot. Actually, I should say I did a lot of soundtrack work with her for her animations. That's how I got into composing, really, and got into doing some of the other stuff I do. So we had a residency together. She was working on a film. I was working on music, and I'm like, you know, you're in that situation. Okay, ready? Be creative.
Yeah.
You know. And it doesn't work that way, you know, for me anyway. But what I did think, I was kind of heavy into New Orleans music at that point for a variety of reasons. And New Orleans Second Line, brass band, Mardi Gras music. And there's a composer, a piano player, who was named Professor Longhair. And he had a certain style. His left hand, his bass notes, bass lines were kind of very unique. And so I thought, you know, I'm going to try to kind of cop that a little bit. And so I wrote a little bass line. Bump, bum, bump, ba-da-da, ba-da, bump, ba-da, ba-da-da, ba-da. And I don't know, I kind of felt like, you know, maybe that's a little bit of the taste of Professor Longhair's style. And I built that song on a modified blues form. So usually a blues form will go 1, then the 4 chord, the chord that starts on the 4th note of the scale, and then the 5 chord, you know. I did it instead, the 1 and the 3.
Okay.
And the 1, 4, and the 1, 3, 4, and then finally went to 5 and back to 1. So, so it's kind of blues influenced in terms of the form. It's a 12-bar form, but it's not quite the same. So that's I Got It. I started playing music when I was 10. When I was growing up in New Jersey, I played the clarinet. And I was a kind of a compulsive kid. I practiced a lot. My mom would call me down for dinner, and I'd be like, I'm not done with my practicing yet, that kind of thing. So I stuck with that for a while, stuck with that through high school, did pretty well on the clarinet. I could read music. I couldn't improvise. There was a kid in my high school, Jackie Leroy, who improvised. He did, I don't know, Dixieland and jazz, and I was mystified. How does he do that? What is he doing? I just knew how to read the notes on a page. It was really a thing and a mystery to me. And I got to college, and right off the bat, I was chasing a guy down the hall, and I ran into a door and broke my front tooth.
Oh!
And that is pretty much not a good thing for playing clarinet.
Yeah.
So I started playing the flute. My sister had a flute. My sister played flute, and so I was able, and she didn't continue with it, so I had a flute available. I played flute, I jammed with people, and I learned a little bit about what notes work with what chords, and blues and folk singers who are playing very harmonically simple material, usually blues-based, 1-4-5 kind of stuff. And I learned a little bit just by ear about how to approach that kind of material on the flute. And after a little while, I got moderately okay at it, not good, just not bad. And I met some people. This was in Providence, Rhode Island, where I was going to college. And I met some people through a mutual friend who were doing some interesting, creative music. They were playing McCoy Tyner and Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart and Weather Report and all this incredible stuff, and they're incredible players, and I started jamming with them on flute. And I managed to kind of hold my own, and at some point somebody was selling a saxophone. I picked up an alto saxophone. The saxophone just pushes up on the tooth, so it's a fake tooth. So it pushes up on the tooth, not out, like clarinet does, so it's a little more stable.
Right.
So I picked up the saxophone, started playing the saxophone, started practicing. I eventually started taking lessons up in Boston with a teacher named Joe Viola, a very prominent saxophone teacher who has passed many years ago, but incredible opportunity for me to go up once a week from Providence area up to take a bus up to Berkeley, who was teaching at Berkeley, and to take one lesson with him a week. I was initially incredibly intimidated, but he just taught me a ton, including one of the very important things was he said you should just read concert, learn how to read concert on the saxophone. Saxophone's a transposing instrument, meaning when you play what's typically called a C on the saxophone, it's not the same as a C on the piano. Okay. It's called a transposing instrument. But he taught me, play it, learn what the C on the piano is on your instrument, and think of it in those terms. So anyway, did that for a while. All along, I was doing other work. I was doing computer work, and I learned a lot. I eventually took time off from my job to go up to Berkeley full time. Learned the tools that I needed to really be able to function in a pretty much any kind of musical situation. Not quite. I couldn't excel, but I could function and not be embarrassed.
Right.
And that's important because that means you can go into situations. You can jam with people. You can sit in on a gig or be hired for a gig. And you might not be the best person on the stage, but you're not going to walk away with your tail between your legs, right? I mean, sometimes you will, but so that was where I really learned by playing with people. I played with all kinds of people. By that time, I was living in Boston. I played with reggae bands. I played with African bands. I played with jazz groups. I played with funk groups. I played all kinds of stuff. Well, John's Jailhouse Blues is about John.
Okay. Who's John?
John was a roommate of mine way back in the day when I was living in the Allston section of Boston, going to Berkeley. And John was a roommate who was a school bus driver.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, there was actually a school bus driver strike.
Okay.
And the city of Boston didn't like that, right? Because kids need to go to school, so they made it illegal for school bus drivers. Maybe before the strike, maybe during the strike. I don't remember. There was something that made it so that was not legal for the school bus drivers to strike. And John, along with many other school bus drivers, felt like it was their right to say that things were not the way they needed to be for the bus drivers, and they continued to strike. So John went to jail.
Ah.
So I was at the time living as one of John's roommates, going to Berkeley, and so I wrote this piece, John's Jailhouse Blues, which is also a blues-based song. It's it has some modifications. I've added some chords in there, sort of things I learned at Berkeley.
Sure, yeah.
You can do this. Okay, I'll try that. Why not? And I also have a very kind of mathematical brain, so I did some things that sort of made sense mathematically,
Yeah.
and parallel chord structures. At the end of a blues, sometimes you go 5, 4, 1. Well, I went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ah,
So,
nice little walk
it's
down.
just counting. It's
Yeah.
counting. recently, over the past couple of years, we know there's been this conflict in Ukraine, and I'll say I had been playing with a certain chord structure that was based on the harmonic minor scale.
Okay.
And, if you take the major scale and you build a chord on each note, on the first note you get a major chord, second note you get a minor chord. So you can do that same thing with the harmonic minor scale and get harmonic minor diatonic harmony,
Okay.
what it would be called. And you get a totally different set of chords if you're building it on the harmonic minor scale. So I sort of built something, a chord sequence based on those harmonic minor diatonic harmony chords. And I thought, I like this. And I played around with it for a while, just arpeggiating it on the saxophone mostly. Then I started coming up with a little melody to fit these chords. And I decided to dedicate it to the conflict in Ukraine. And I called the song Nezalezhnist, which means independence in Ukrainian. And I reworked it a little bit after I started working on it. I changed a couple of notes here and there, but basically it's what I originally wrote. And I'm very, I think it's a good song. I think it's a good piece. And I think when people play it and they know that that's what the inspiration for that title, for that song is, they play it differently because, what I say when I introduce the song in live performance is that here we are, we're in a relatively comfortable situation here in our country. I mean, there are things, but, we all have food to eat and we don't have bombs dropping on our head like some people in many parts of the world now, unfortunately. But to remind us that there are people who are really living very different lives and very challenging lives if they're, even lucky enough to be alive, right? So that's something I think is important for us to remember as we go about our as we play up-tempo party music, to think about other aspects of life. key for me was to start slowly, to realize, and this is what I recommend to people who are maybe classically trained and are uncomfortable doing things that aren't written on the page, which is where I came from, right? And what I recommend and what I did was to start with just very simple things. Start with a one-chord vamp, where you can just feel out what notes are going to work here, you know, and some notes will be very harmonious and some notes will be dissonant, and you can kind of use your ear in that very simple harmonic environment and try notes, you know, try it even on the bandstand. If somebody's doing a funk groove in E,
Right.
you can just kind of try a note, and if it's dissonant, well, then you might want to resolve it to a
Right.
note that is not dissonant, you know, that is harmonious in that key. Down by the Riverside is a traditional hymn, often done in New Orleans style. I have a very close affinity to New Orleans brass band music. My main group, my main performing group is called the Revolutionary Snake Ensemble.
Nice.
And we're...
Great name.
Thank you. We're influenced by New Orleans brass band, second line, Mardi Gras music, and also by free improv and by funk.
Yeah.
You know, that's what that group is about. Kind of brings together three legs of that stool. And Down by the Riverside comes from that tradition, or is incorporated into that tradition. But I played around with it, had some, I don't know, some things happened when I was working on that piece of music, and ended up transmogrifying it into a minor key, into a slower groove. I wrote a new bass line for it. I added different harmony at times to it.
And the flute, you decided that what instrument you're going to use, and the flute is the one on that one.
Well, I will say that that song, as with any of my music, I've played on different instruments at different times.
Okay, so it doesn't, you might play that again on the sax or
Correct.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, and in fact, the Snake Ensemble recorded it with a vocalist, which we don't usually do, with a great vocalist named Gabrielle Agachico, who sadly left us a couple of years ago. But she sang a beautiful vocal on that on our album. I think it was called Forked Tongue. And on that I played saxophone. But, you know, I think a song is a skeleton. Mm-hmm. The chords, maybe the bass line, the melody, that's the skeleton of the song. And what you do with it is putting the flesh on it. And you can do that in so many ways with any particular song, any particular skeleton. You know, we do with the Snake Ensemble, we do a song by Sun Ra called A Call for All Demons. And I never even listened to Sun Ra's performance of it. Yeah. Before we started doing it, I saw some sheet music for it. I said, oh, that could really be cool. And we do it in a very different way. Yeah. We put totally different, you know, body on that skeletal chord and melody. And I think it's important to do that. I think if you're doing a song that either you've written or somebody else has written, you want to put your own thing on it. You know, why do the same thing that somebody else has done? Why not do your own thing and do it your own way? If that involves different instruments, if that involves different groove, or different, even changing chords sometimes, whatever, different tempo, that's all, I think, a positive. And when I play with the Snake Ensemble, every time we do a song, it's different.
Yeah.
From night to night, you know, different solos, different, you know, different intro, just like what occurs to me, really, at the moment. I'm the leader of the band, so what occurs to me and what occurs to the other musicians, because they have flexibility to do what they think is right at any particular moment. I think that we follow a path in life, you know, and you make certain choices, or some choices are imposed on you many times not great choices that are imposed on you in terms of your economic situation, you know, where you were born, all kinds of things are imposed, and then you make choices within those constraints, right? Yeah. And a lot of times you just kind of, it's random, you know, you follow this random path through life, right? Yeah. Well, my random path through life, I mean, it led me in a number of different places. I did computer work for many years, you know, and now I do music full time, and that was a choice, you know. Sure. That was a difficult choice because I gave up a good paying job. Yeah. I had some, you know, some sort of, there was a little push, you know, to get me in that place. But it was a choice that I just said, you know, I'm going to just try it. I'm going to take this risk because life is risk. Yeah. You know, every choice you make is a risk. You don't know. There's no guaranteed outcomes of any choice you make. Yep. So the more comfortable choices are sometimes the right choices, and sometimes the right choice is something that might fail. Right. Right? I mean, and I think that's true in music too. In improvised music, you are making choices every moment when you're improvising. You're making choices. Are you going to take the easy path? Are you going to take the one you did last night and know, oh, that note will work, you know? Or are you going to like try something different? And I think that music, improvised music in particular, is an experiment, right? If you know what's going to happen, it's not an experiment anymore. Yeah. It's like doing something you know is going to work. Yep. So let's try an experiment. Well, that means it might fail. Yeah. Right? That's what an experiment is. You don't know what's going to happen. You have to be willing to take that risk. You have to be willing to fail to do creative instrumental and improvisational music.
You said, I'm going to take that risk.
And it's the same in life. Yeah, you take a risk. You might fail, but you might. And I've been super, super, super lucky, right? Yeah. That it's worked out for me. I don't think it had, you know, I mean, it has to do with some amount of work and paying attention to opportunities and taking them when they present themselves. For me, it had a lot to do with not going the sort of commercial route with music. Mm-hmm. playing wedding bands. I do that occasionally, but it's not my thing.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not good enough to do that. So I've done my own thing and sort of focused on interesting, experimental, maybe music that is like exciting to me.
Yep.
And that's been joyful, and that's been a pleasure, and also I've been just extremely lucky.
Hell yeah.
So I have no regrets whatsoever.
How can you, right?
Yeah,
right,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, and but I think most people have a path in their life, and that they, if you take full advantage of the opportunities presented to you, and you take a few risks here and there, I think, like I say, I've been very lucky. It could have turned out another way. I could have made the same choices, and it could have turned out to be a failure and not able to sustain myself financially, and I would have had to do something else.
Yep.
So, it's not always going to work out, but if you don't take the risk, you'll never know.